If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Chapter 7. A Friendly Discussion. Part 1. Six ponies and one young dragon sat around the table in the throne room of Twilight's castle. Twilight herself was slumped over on the table, face down, hooves limply splayed out next to her head. Every once in a while, she let out a deep sigh.
And she's been like this for how long?
Asked Applejack, cocking an eyebrow.
About a day,
Starlight said with a shrug.
She was fine after she came back from Camelot, but then yesterday she got some sort of a letter.
With another groan, Twilight pushed an envelope out from under her face, sending it sliding across the table. It stopped in front of Fluttershy, who hesitantly picked it up.
Oh,
she said sadly after looking through the papers inside for a moment.
It's from the palace. It's the forms Twilight needs to fill out to divorce Queen Chrysalis. I'm going to lose her,
moaned Twilight into the table as the other ponies looked at her with varying degrees of sympathy.
I messed up everything, and I can't get over what she's done, so now I can't love her even though I do, and I'm going to be all alone forever. No, Twilight, everything's going to be just fine,
Pinkie said cheerfully, bouncing up and down next to Twilight's chair.
We can figure this out. You just need to cheer up and give it a good think, and there's no better way to do that than with a party!
She slammed her party cannon down onto the table and set it right off next to Twilight's head. The explosion of confetti blew the alicorn's mane off to the side and decorated it with confetti, but otherwise had no effect.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pinkie,
said Twilight despondently.
But I don't think a party can help me right now.
Pinkie, staring at Twilight, blinked. Then she blinked a few more times.
You see, I know the words you just used, but I don't understand the way you used them,
she said finally.
Look, I don't see what the problem is,
said Rainbow Dash, waving a hoof dismissively as Pinkie slunk back to her seat.
Who cares if you got some paper from the palace? Just don't sign them. It's not that easy, Rainbow,
sighed Twilight.
If I don't sign them, the divorce will be contested. Then I'll have to go to court to settle it, and I'd rather not put Chrysalis through all that. Well, what if the papers accidentally got destroyed? There's a lot of candles in your study, right? So it's a felony to destroy official palace documents. Okay, then what if you lost them? I can hide them somewhere you'll never find them. Underneath one of the tables at Sugar Cube Corner,
Twilight said with a sigh.
How did you know? No. I'm talking somewhere really hidden. Behind your framed and autographed portrait of Spitfire? Stop it. The point is, there's a time limit on this. If I don't sign and return the papers soon enough, it becomes a court issue. Then it becomes a media circus, and I'd really like to avoid that. Not just for myself, but...
Twilight sighed again.
If I just sign the papers, this will all end quietly. There will be some noise when it gets out, sure, but Chrysalis will be safe from that. She'll be in her hive. And you can be sure none of the changelings will let any reporters in. But if I turn it into a contested divorce, if we have to go to court, she'll have to see me again. That's the last thing she needs when she's trying to get over me. And after what she already did, admitting I never loved her, vowing to all of Equestria that she would win me over, putting her through another gauntlet of reporters when she was to go to the courtroom would be cruel. I can't do that to her. Okay, then what if we delay it somehow? Asked Rainbow Dash. We could, Dash. Please.
Twilight finally raised her head, a tired, resigned smile on her face.
I appreciate you trying to help, but I don't think there's anything that can be done. I think it's over.
This isn't just about you,
huffed Rainbow Dash, sitting back and crossing her forelegs.
Other ponies are going to be affected by this.
What are you talking about?
Asked Twilight, tilting her head up and to the side in puzzlement.
Are you really that concerned about my romantic relationships?
No, it's just...
Rainbow Dash looked around at her other friends, who were looking back at her, then sighed.
Okay, look. Queen Chrysalis really likes you. Like, a lot. You make her happy, and that makes the changelings happy, and they're really cool, okay? After I fought them off during your wedding...
Applejack suddenly started coughing into her hoof. 2 broken ribs.
After I fought them off,
continued Rainbow Dash loudly,
we went to a bar and had a few drinks. It's not like there was actually any bad blood between us, and, well, like I said, they're actually pretty cool. I started hanging out with a couple of them. We even fight every once in a while. Well, more like sparring, I guess. That whole hive mind thing is really annoying, too, because as soon as one figures out something that works against me, they all know it. It's been taking everything I have just to keep up with them.
I kicked your flank up in damn Ponyville last week.
Sounds like you got something in your throat there, Applejack,
growled Rainbow Dash, glaring across the table at the smirking farm pony.
Do you need a pitcher of water for that? Like, upside your head, maybe?
Careful now, Sugar Cube,
Applejack said with a challenging grin.
I might be a changeling, and then you'd really be in trouble.
Fluttershy let out a gasp.
But you're not, are you?
Would it matter if I was?
Asked Applejack, shrugging.
Look, Twilight.
Rainbow Dash turned back to her, dismissing the other ponies.
All I'm saying is, if you actually do sign those papers, every pony will be miserable. Queen Chrysalis, the changelings, and even you. I don't know if you do love her or not, but it's pretty obvious you care about her a lot. It's just...
She took a deep breath, then continued.
Look, you're my friend, and the changelings are my friends, and I just want you to be happy, okay? And I think you staying with Queen Chrysalis would make all of you happy.
You do?
Asked Twilight breathlessly, and Rainbow Dash nodded uncomfortably.
Why?
Oh, jeez.
Dash squirmed in her seat, but she was no match for Twilight's wide, hopeful eyes, and she finally slumped down.
It was just this look you gave her sometimes, you know? You'd smile and... Okay, this is really sappy, but you looked like she meant the world to you. And even when you got mad and yelled at her, it always seemed like you weren't really angry. Just disappointed. Like you weren't surprised she'd done whatever it was that made you angry, but you wanted more out of her, and well... I think that's how you act when you love some pony.
Dash.
Twilight was trying to blink back a few tears, reaching a hoof out across the table to the blue Pegasus.
Thank you. I never knew you had so much insight into relationships.
All right, cut it out,
grumbled Rainbow Dash.
I'm just telling you what I saw. Don't go trying to turn me into another rarity or something, all obsessed with romance novels and trying to get ponies to fall in love.
She gestured across the table at the throne with 3 diamonds on its back that was currently occupied by Starlight Glimmer.
Besides, we had enough trouble sneaking in here without being noticed. I don't think all of you could have gotten past Rarity and me.
Twilight made a face, then it relaxed into a smile.
Thank you though, Dash. Seriously.
Dash waved a hoof in nonchalance, and Twilight sat up, straightening her back and looking determinedly at her friends. For the first time since they'd seen her that day, she looked back to her normal self.
This is exactly why I came to talk to you all,
she said confidently, tapping a hoof on the table.
I know that with your help, I can figure out how to confront my feelings. After all, you all support me in this.
Silence raced around the table, as most of her friends fidgeted nervously and did their best to avoid eye contact.
None of you think I should stay together with Chrysalis?
She asked timidly. I do, said Spike from her side, enthusiastically waving a claw. Rainbow Dash raised her hoof, frowning around the table at the others. Fluttershy kind of just shrugged her shoulders, looking like she wanted to raise her hoof, but ultimately not doing so. Applejack's hoof made it almost halfway up, then slowly descended back to the tabletop. Pinkie Pie continued to stare off into space, and Starlight didn't move at all, her forelegs resolutely crossed over her chest.
Why?
Asked Twilight, ears drooping, her voice sounding small and lost.
Because she's mean, Twilight.
Fluttershy, to everyone's surprise, was the first one to speak up. She even had a bit of a frown on her face.
Gilda mean, almost. But at least Gilda didn't enjoy it in the same way Chrysalis does. She thinks it's funny to push ponies or trip them or call them inferior. She's nice to you, but not anyone else. And we know you like her, and she really likes you. It's not that we don't want the two of you together, especially if it's what you want. But we're afraid she might not be right for you. You're the Princess of Friendship, and it just seems like you should have someone friendly as your special sun pony. You don't think maybe someone who's kind of unfriendly would work?
Asked Twilight pleadingly.
I could teach her about friendship. Doesn't that make more sense than someone who's just like me? I'm not saying it wouldn't work, that you two couldn't be happy together,
said Fluttershy, lowering her head and looking up at Twilight with nervous eyes.
Just, we're worried about you. I'll support you no matter what you want to do. I'm just not sure how I feel about having Queen Chrysalis around more. Oh, that's understandable, I suppose.
Twilight looked down at the table and sighed, and Fluttershy frowned.
I'm sorry, Twilight. I didn't mean... No, Fluttershy, it's okay.
Twilight cut her off with a raised hoof.
The fact that you'll stand by me no matter what decision I make means a lot to me. And I can understand that you might not be excited about Chrysalis becoming a permanent part of our lives, even if you are happy for me.
Twilight shifted her gaze to the farm pony, who was currently tapping her hoof on the table and frowning in thought.
What about you, Applejack? Just a few days ago, you were fine with the idea of us staying married. You even seemed upset that I hadn't decided yet. Well, I suppose you had a few reservations about the whole assassination thing.
And I still do. Applejack looked up, eyes level as she met Twilight's gaze. But that ain't my problem with the Queen. Or not the problem I'm concerned with right now. Fluttershy's right, though. I just don't feel like Chrysalis is right for you. She's dishonest, and I don't mean by lying. Even I gotta admit, I don't think I've ever heard her straight up tell a lie, at least not while she's walking around as herself, but not lying and being honest are two different things. She's slippery. She sneaks around. I know she's a changeling and that's just how they are and we shouldn't judge them, but it sets my teeth on edge. A lie of omission is still a lie, and she seems perfectly happy telling all of those that she wants.
So you think she's wrong for me too?
Well, now, I didn't say that. She does seem to make you awful happy, and I ain't gonna say you should stay away from some pony who treats you so nicely. It's just, I think she might be a bad influence on you. You like her and you accept what she's doing, or at least shrug it off, and the next thing we know, you're acting like her too, all manipulative and whatnot.
Oh.
Twilight looked at Applejack guiltily.
Is this about how I lied to all of you about loving her in the first place?
Shoot no, Twi. Applejack gave her a grin. Matter of fact, I happen to think the only one you were lying to about that was yourself. Twilight blushed, a smile on her face.
Well, maybe. It's like Fluttershy said, we're just worried about you, that's all. We just want to make sure your special sun pony is someone who can treat you right, the way we want to see our friend treated. And we're just having trouble getting Queen Chrysalis to fit into that image, even after seeing how she's been acting towards you over the last few months.
She really can be very nice,
said Twilight insistently.
It's just that you aren't around her enough, and she tends to reserve a lot of her affection for the hive and me. And she always has to be a true queen out in public. You don't get to see what she's really like.
I'll admit, y'all got a point there, said Applejack with a nod. So what is she like in private? What is it about her you like so much?
Well...
Twilight, face down on the bed, groaned into the sheet as Chrysalis's hooves worked their way up her spine, and the changeling let out a small chuckle.
You really need to relax more,
she chided the pony, who squirmed beneath her.
You know, I spent a year in Camelot disguised as a masseuse before I managed to get a hold of Cadence, and not once did I have a customer whose muscles were as tense as yours can get. That's not exactly the kind of story that makes me want to relax,
grumbled Twilight, any further attempts at a reprimand fading away into a long sigh as Chrysalis put a hoof directly between her wings and dug it in with all her force. Unlike the ponies at the spa, Chrysalis had enough power to break apart the stiffness in Twilight's alicorn muscles, and she knew she could use that strength without hurting the pony.
Now, conquests and kidnappings are always great ways to relieve stress.
Chrysalis let out a throaty chuckle, increasing the speed of her massage.
How would you like to give it a try? Say, Camelot, a few days from now. Sorry, but I'm on to your tricks.
Twilight sighed.
You're going to have to do better if you want to bribe me into something like that. Bribe, you say?
Chrysalis's hooves started to travel down her back, moving in small circles and breaking up the pockets of tension they found. But they didn't stop, continuing down until they were just above her hips, slowly massaging her sides. Twilight let out a soft moan. Chrysalis had shifted her position slightly, and she could just feel the changeling's breath hot on one of her ears. Slowly, Chrysalis's hooves moved inwards, stopping just above the small of her back. For a moment, they seemed about to move downwards, then instead swept upwards in a simple back rub, gently massaging the pony's back rather than giving the deep, tension-relieving strokes they had been earlier. Twilight did her best to stifle a groan. She knew exactly what Chrysalis was doing, and she wasn't going to give the changeling the pleasure of knowing her attempts to turn this into anything more intimate than the kind of massage one might receive from a spa. A reputable spa were bearing fruit. Of course, Chrysalis, with her hooves pressed firmly into Twilight's back, felt the groan anyway, and let out another chuckle. The pressure on her back suddenly disappeared, and for a moment, Twilight wondered what was going to happen next. Then, one of her wings was firmly grasped in two hooves and pulled, and she grunted as sore, underused muscles were suddenly stretched to their full extent.
You need to fly more,
tisked Chrysalis, shaking her head.
It's not good to keep these wings folded up all the time. You sound like Rainbow Dash,
grumbled Twilight. Then she gasped as Chrysalis began to preen her wing. Twilight's own teeth were flat and blocky, and did a serviceable enough job cleaning her feathers and pulling out broken ones, but Chrysalis's teeth were pointed, and she enjoyed letting them scrape along the skin of Twilight's wing, which sent a wonderful shiver of pleasure along the pony's spine. The massage was nice, and the teasing of something more had been intriguing, to say the least, but this was pure bliss. And Twilight let out a sigh and melted down onto the bed as Chrysalis slowly worked her way along the wing. Twilight's friends stared at her. She hadn't said a word after trailing off, but her face had gone an alarming shade of red as she stared into her own memories.
She treats me like the only thing in the world she cares about,
said Twilight finally, blushing even harder, and she realized exactly what she had just been thinking about in front of all of her friends.
And, she has strong hooves and sharp teeth.
Not gonna ask what you mean by that last part, said Applejack, a puzzled and slightly embarrassed look on her face. She glanced away, drumming one hoof on the table, then sighed and turned back. Look, Twi, she said, face stern. I gotta be honest with you, and not just because of my element. Queen Chrysalis is not a pleasant pony to be around most of the time. I'll be the first to admit she's not quite as bad as we first thought, and I've actually seen her be downright kind once or twice to ponies who weren't even you, but she's still one of the meanest or nariest critters I've ever met. I ain't never seen some pony get so mad about the number of sprinkles on their cupcake, and that just ain't the kind of pony I think you should spend your time with, let alone the rest of your life. But she loves you. Shoot, any pony can see that. I can't imagine anything else that would make that changeling do some of the things I've seen her do for you. I don't think there are many ponies that would give you everything the way she does, or give up some of the things she has. And just looking at the way you're suffering makes me think you feel the same way about her, even if you can't get over all the things she's done. That might make me okay with the two of you staying married. You ain't just gonna forget what she's done, but you can forgive her, I think. And even some pony like her deserves to have some pony who loves her. Plus, since you won't forget, you won't be letting her try something like that again. And I doubt she can change who you are. So all them worries I have about her corrupting you probably mean about as much as the slop I feed the pigs. Heck, if anything, you might actually make her nicer.
Applejack?
Asked Twilight quietly.
Does that mean...
She trailed off, and Applejack shook her head. Nope. I ain't saying the two of you should stay hitched, but I ain't saying y'all shouldn't either. I'm saying I trust you. Same as I said when I first found out you'd married the Queen. I think you know what you want to do, and I don't think it's my place to tell you either way. You don't need any of us to tell you what to do. Twilight stared at her for a moment, then gave her first real, confident smile of the day.
Thank you, Applejack. That means a lot.
No big deal, ma'am, drawled Applejack with a grin and tip of her hat.
So then,
said Twilight, shifting her gaze,
that leaves the pony that Chrysalis has done her best to kill, torture, and or drive out of the castle,
confirmed Starlight with a sharp nod of her head, and Twilight winced.
That's not fair,
asked Starlight, arching an eyebrow.
A completely reasonable description of the thing she's done. Exactly what happened. I was going to say it's not the full story. Oh, right. I forgot where she did all of that just because she couldn't stand you living in the same building as another pony. That makes everything she's done completely understandable. Sorry for over-exaggerating. She's just kind of protective, Twilight. She's a jealous monster.
Starlight banged a hoof meaningfully on the table.
And I know a thing or two about being a jealous monster. Of course she's jealous. She loves me,
huffed Twilight.
And we're married. How did you expect her to react to me living with another pony while she had to stay in her hive most of the time? Not with attempted murder. That just means she respects you.
Twilight looked at Starlight's face and winced.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, it's just how she is. And she did tone it down after I asked her to, didn't she? Oh yes, it's been fantastic,
said Starlight, voice dripping with sarcasm as she rolled her eyes.
After all, now I only have to worry about being crippled by a changeling queen who's mad with jealousy over a completely platonic student-teacher relationship. Wait, crippled? That's not right. I told her nothing more than mangled.
Twilight winced again at Starlight's expression.
Sorry, bad joke. Twilight. That's my problem right there.
Starlight leaned forward, scowling.
You let her just get away with everything. She burns down a building. Oh, she paid to have it rebuilt, and now she knows she's not supposed to do that kind of thing. She tries to kill me. Oh, she's just a little jealous that we live together. She'll only try to wound me now. She tries to kill the princesses. Oh, she's just trying to assert her dominance. It isn't serious. Starlight, she doesn't... Don't tell me she doesn't mean it. You know she does. The only thing holding her back is that you've told her she can't do any of those things. You're relying completely on trust that the maniacal villain is so in love with you that she's willing to put aside everything else she wants in her life just because you say so. Sorry, Starlight, but it sounds like you're actually arguing that I should stay with Chrysalis,
said Twilight meekly.
You want to know what the most infuriating thing is?
Starlight asked after a long, uncomfortable moment of glowering at Twilight.
She's never had to apologize for any of the things she's done. Queen Chrysalis tried to take over Equestria. She tried to enslave every pony. And what do you say? Oh, well, changelings will be changelings. She hasn't had to grovel and beg for every pony's forgiveness. She doesn't have to spend every single day trying to make up for things she's done. She doesn't have to do friendship lessons. Starlight, what?
Twilight cocked her head to the side.
I'm not quite sure I follow what you're saying. Don't you think I want to take over Equestria too?
Yelled Starlight, slamming one hoof to the table to pushing herself up with it, while holding the other to her chest.
I filled up 3 notebooks with plans since I came to live here. Oh, but I can't act on any of them, can I? No, the slightest hint that I'm backsliding, and I'm sure I'll get rainbows in places where rainbows aren't meant to go. But then Little Miss Perfect Changeling comes along, shakes her flank in your face, and gives you a ring, and suddenly you're completely fine with a former villain who gets to be your friend and try to take over Equestria at the same time. Suddenly it's cute and amusing.
Twilight blinked disbelievingly at Starlight.
Are you jealous of her? No!
Starlight sat back down with a huff, crossing her forelegs again.
Listen, Starlight.
Twilight hesitated for a moment, then continued.
I'll always be your friend. You know that, right? But I also have other friends. And a pony like Chrysalis is a very special friend who means more to me than my other friends. That doesn't mean that you and all my friends are any less important or special to me than you were before. Just that my feelings for Chrysalis are different. You see, when two ponies really like each other, oh, Celestia.
Starlight buried her face in her hooves.
Twilight, I am well aware of what love and marriage are and what they mean. I am not jealous, and I don't feel like she is somehow going to steal you away from me. I'm just worried that you're giving her too much leeway. And it's a bit of a double standard, too. I get forced to apologize and start learning about friendship, but you just wave off everything she does? Why were my attempts to take over Equestria so much worse?
You did destroy the world with time travel,
pointed out Rainbow Dash after an uncomfortable silence.
I mean, Chrysalis just tried to take over Equestria, and I'll be quiet now.
Starlight turned her glare from Rainbow to Twilight.
It's different with Chrysalis,
said Twilight, fidgeting under Starlight's gaze.
She's a completely different kind of pony than you are. In fact, she's not a pony at all. She's a changeling. Telling her to stop trying to take over the world would be like telling a Pegasus not to fly. The things she does are just the way she is. And she doesn't mean it. Not really. If she actually wanted to take over Equestria, she could have by now. She has, I will admit, gotten me to lower my guard enough that I wouldn't even see it coming. But she hasn't conquered Equestria. In fact, she almost goes out of her way to let me stop her. I don't think it really matters to her whether she wins or not, just that she makes the attempt. And I think as long as I'm around, she doesn't actually want to win. Because she knows how that would make me feel.
Twilight took a deep breath, looking levelly back at Starlight.
And I don't think you're that kind of pony. I think you truly want to be friends with every pony. That you want to move away from your past and become a different pony than you used to be. Am I wrong?
Starlight sighed and closed her eyes.
No, Twilight, you aren't. And I don't really want to take over Equestria anymore. Not seriously. Making all those plans, writing them down, it's just a way to get it out of my system. I do still feel the urge every once in a while, and that's how I deal with it. And that's good,
Twilight said encouragingly.
You can always come talk to me, too, if you need to. Just like Chrysalis can always count on me to foil her plans.
With an exasperated groan, Starlight threw up her hooves.
I give up. You really are in love with her, aren't you? I'm almost sure I am,
said Twilight meekly, a small smile on her face.
Maybe 95% sure. I don't know what you see in her.
Starlight shook her head slowly.
I certainly don't see it, that's for sure. But if you really want to go through with this, I won't stop you. I'd never stand in the way of happiness for one of my friends, even if I can't understand it. And if Chrysalis does end up living with us, I'll do my best to get along with her. Hopefully being actually married to you will mellow her out a bit.
Starlight leaned forward, pointing a hoof at Twilight.
But I'm telling you right now, I don't trust her. Just like you didn't trust Trixie. But at least she was reformed. And when this all blows up in your face and I have to rescue everyone, I'll definitely say I told you so. Duly noted,
said Twilight with a smile, and Starlight gave a nod and sat back. But as she did, the smile slowly ran off Twilight's face, and she took to studying the table surface again.
Is Starlight right?
She asked after a moment, lifting her gaze around at her friends.
Is it a bad idea to stay with Chrysalis? She is dangerous, Starlight's right about that. And I can't seem to find that love inside me that I know is there, so maybe... Would it be better to just let her stay away now that she's decided that's what she wants? Just chalk all this up to a big misunderstanding? Something that might have worked out but ultimately didn't? That would probably be a really bad idea,
said Pinky, speaking for the first time since the discussion had begun. All ponies turned to her, blinking in surprise, but she didn't look up and just kept idly tracing circles on the table with one hoof.
I mean, just think of what Queen Chrysalis would do. We all know she loves you with all her heart, and with a changeling that can be an awful lot of love. You know, depending on her diet. But imagine what would happen if she was forced to keep all of that inside herself for years, maybe even decades. She won't just pretend you don't exist, Twilight. Oh, she says she doesn't want you to contact her ever again, but you know she's going to be watching you just like she was before. Except even more now. With how you'll probably be interacting with changelings on a daily basis as they become citizens of Equestria. You may not see her, but she'll see you in the hive mind every day. She'll start finding excuses to have changelings visit you, so she can glimpse just a few extra minutes of you in their memories. Why not me? What did I do wrong, she'll ask herself, day in, day out. And that love in her heart, once so pure, will fester, turning into a black bile that chokes her every time she thinks of you. Eventually it'll become hate. But you'll be so consumed by it at that point she won't even notice. And finally she'll unleash her legions upon Equestria, crushing all resistance under her hoof and taking you by force. But at that point there won't be any love left. She'll try to love you, and she might think she does. But it will all be hate. A dark, bitter hate that she can't get rid of no matter how she tries. And the twisted mockery of a relationship she forces you to have with her will turn both your lives into an eternally suffering hell from which there will be no escape.
Twilight and her friends all wore the same expression. That of a pony who had been hit by a cart and was trying to figure out what exactly had happened and how they had come to be laying halfway down the street from where they had been standing a quarter of a second earlier.
And things might actually end up even worse for everyone if she doesn't do that, Twilight. Because of you.
Continued Pinkie, not noticing any of this.
You know you love her, but you can't admit it. Can't bring yourself to feel it. So in every relationship you have from now on, that will always be in the back of your mind. Do I love this pony as much as I love Chrysalis? What happens if I suddenly realize I do love Chrysalis? It will poison every attempt you make at trying to love another pony, like a venom running through your heart. You'll grow bitter, blaming Chrysalis for your failures at forming meaningful relationships. Eventually you'll shut yourself away, refusing to even try forming those relationships at all, on the off chance that you might suddenly decide to reject them for Chrysalis. And so you'll wait, alone in your castle, your love congealing in your heart until you can't feel anything at all anymore. And finally, after who knows how many indeterminable, dreary years, you'll give in. You'll go back to Chrysalis, claiming you love her, asking her to take you back. And she will, because she loves you so very much that she won't even notice your lies. Because they will be lies, won't they, Twilight? You won't love her at all. No, not after so long. Not after blaming her for the failure of every relationship you've ever tried to have. You'll be resentful, spiteful. Everything she does will be wrong. Every imperfection in your lives will be her fault. She'll keep trying, though. Dying of thirst and begging for even a drop of your love. And that will be your marriage. You, an icy, bitter matron, hating your wife with every fiber of your being, even if you don't realize it. And Queen Chrysalis, reduced to a fawning sycophant, desperate for nothing more than a nice word for you. A kind touch. Just a smidgen of love that never, ever comes.
Done talking, Pinkie went silent again, still making circles with her hoof. She didn't notice her friends staring at her, which made sense, seeing as they were all sitting in a shocked silence, their eyes wide and jaws hanging agape.
Wow, Pinkie, that's...
Twilight started to say, being the first to recover.
What?
Pinkie looked up, blinking a few times.
Oh, hi. Sorry, Twilight. What'd you say? I was thinking about parties.
Twilight opened her mouth, raising a hoof, then sat back, shaking her head.
Just wondering what you think about Chrysalis and I staying married. Or not being married. Oh, you should definitely stay married,
said Pinkie, nodding her head energetically.
You two are just so adorable together. Plus, if you broke up...
She trailed off for a moment, and every pony in the room held their breath.
If you broke up, every pony would be super duper sad.
A gust of wind blew around the room as the ponies in it started breathing again.
So then you like Chrysalis?
Asked Twilight nervously.
Oh, she's so much fun,
said Pinkie happily, bouncing up and down a few times in her chair.
She likes playing tricks just like me. She doesn't seem to like surprise parties very much, though. Which is why I found this neat crepe paper that burns up really fast and clean. So next time we probably won't have to call the fire department. Plus, I'll get extra balloons since she likes to pop them so much.
The other ponies in the room looked at each other, and they all instantly and silently decided to pretend that Pinkie hadn't said anything before Twilight asked her what she thought.